Chase, but like. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Tes. Tessie.
Yes.
We left off at the bottom.
Let's see. Yes.
We left off at the bottom of Chesman Beis. Yeah, how Gavra. No, bottom line. Bottom line.
Yes. Bottom line of this, huh?
Yes. All right. So how Gavra, the Havi, Kamazavin, Choimre, Zichaisa. So there was a guy who was selling these little, we'll define them as tchotchkes, little beads. And also, hi, Isa, a woman came along in Amra, she said to him, Havi lichad, give me one. Havi lichad shocha, give me a strand of these beads. Samarla, okay, I'll give you, but if I give you, then you're going to be mekudeshes to me. Amra le, she said to him, Hava mi hava. Give me, just give me. Anytime someone says give me, it just means they're basically blowing them off and ignoring them and just saying, okay, enough with your shtick, just give me the beats. Similar cases, so there was a person who was drinking wine in the store. Also, a woman came along and give me a cup. Okay, if I give to you, then it'll be mekdesh. Give me drink me. Once again, this is a form of rejection. And something because the person who's up in a tree and he's throwing down dates from the palm tree. A woman came along. Throw me a couple of them. If I throw it to you, then you'll be mekdesh to me. Throw them. Fine. So these three cases, similar halachas, similar situation. See, boilu have ashki v'shadi ma'u. What about if instead of her saying a double lashon, she says, "Give me," or "Give me to drink," or "Throw me," instead of saying a double lashon ma'u. Some Ravina mikudeshes. Ravina says mikudeshes, and Rav Sama Barak Sama Taga de Malka. This is by the crown of the king. Ain't no mikudeshes. Indeed, this case is not mikudeshes. It's not an agreement to the kedushin. It's a form of rejection. The hilchasa ain't the mekadesh halacha in this case is ain't the mekadeshes. The hilchasa shirai in the halacha is by the case of shirai by the silk. Person gives them the silk that's worth it, but it just wasn't evaluated before. Leitzri chashuma does not need to be shuma as long as it's shavapruta. The hilchasa Rabbi Yezer. The halacha is also like Rabbi Yezer in a case of where a person says be mekadesh me the mana. He gives her $1. And it's Mikudeshes from now, it's like Almanas on the condition that basically he fulfills the obligation of paying the rest of the mana. And Ve'elchasa Karava Amar Rav Nachman that we said over there, Mamonin Kan, Mashkanin Kan, right? He said he's gonna give her $100, and she said, she says Mekadesh her, but he says I don't have the money now. He gives her Mashkon, so that Mashkon is nothing because you say Mamonin Kan, Mashkanin. Fine, 2 dots smack in the middle of Tes Amud Aleph. Now, new city. Tanarabban b'shtar ketzad. How does it work with kedushin through a shtar? So kasev lo yalani. He writes on a piece of paper, or a cheres, or a piece of earthenware. Even though the item itself is not worth anything, the shard of earthenware or the piece of paper. He writes on there, Bitcha Mikudeshesli, Bitcha Maresesli, Bitcha Linsu. This is obviously seeing a situation where there's a father marrying off his daughter, but the same would apply if he just gives it to her. And all that Lashon was written on the star. Hare Zu Mikudeshes. She is Mikudeshes. So Masal Rab Zeira Bar Memo, Hala Dani. Understand, it's not similar. Hi Shtara, L'Shtar Zvini. It's not similar to a sale document. Hasam Meicher Kasablo. In the case of a sale document, right, the seller is the one who writes a paper, right? Let's say a car dealership, right? You go to the car dealership, so they give you the paperwork, right? I know now with the real estate agent, right? So don't think of that. Think of like a car dealership, right? So they go ahead, and the seller is writing the star. So they were Hasam Meicher Kasablo, right? Sadim Mechuracham, I feel this sold to you, and Hachal, but Balkaisif, So over there, the one who's selling over here, but it's the one who's buying. is writing the shtar. She should write the shtar. So Marava Hasam Minyan the Krava, Hacham Minyan the Krava. Each one we really learn for the psukim. Hasam Kasiva Macham Mechuzaso. Machar Mechuzaso. So it says there he sold from his family. What's it called? His family estate. So over there it's depending on the seller. He sold the estate. He's selling. Selling is the key. Seller writes the shtar. Over here it says when you go to and acquire. So who's the buyer? The husband. So the husband's the one who writes the shtar. Okay, we'll leave it at Yikanu, right? Fine. Okay.
That's the plus effect.
Yeah. I'm just saying because it's going to change it, right? Yeah. So anyway, so it says Yikanu, right? Is it Yikanu or is that the Shva? Or
But it's Yaknu.
well, that's what the Gemara is going to say, right? Anyways, it says over there the fields, right? Sounds like you will purchase. So you'll purchase, meaning you will buy, meaning so the buyer should write the shtar there, right? So Karbe Yak, right over there. That's will ought to be acquired, i.e., it's the seller. So my time of car is Yak. Why is it Yak? Because over there we saw, but you sell the estate. So Achanami Karbe Kiyukach. Right, when it's taken, the woman allows her to be taken. The ksiv as BC natati l'isha. Right, as the pasuk says, a man gives over his daughter. So he gives over his daughter. He's the one that should write the shtar. Right. That the husband writes the shtar. That the seller writes the shtar. And the rabbanan on the psuk. Or if he goes, sema hasan amiksi bakach as sefer ha mikneh. Right, and that over there is, I guess, Pasuk Yirmiyah when he was buying, right? He was selling. He was buying. He was buying, right? He was buying, right. No, right. He was buying. I gotta say, right. I mean, the Omar Rava, Omar Rav Nachman, Kasav Niyar. We just saw this. Even though the item itself, right, the piece of paper is not worth a pruta. Nevertheless, you're in there. Become a Bein Aide Avia, Bein Aide Asma, whether the document is given to the father or to the girl, Mikudeshes Midaita, as long as the father in the situation has agrees to it, right? Some with his consent, then it works. Ushala Bagra, right? And that's only if she has not become 12 and a half. She becomes 12 and a half. We don't care if the father gives consent because it's not up to him. Similarly, write in a piece of paper, a shard of earthenware, and even though those items are not with it, pruta. That you are married to me, right? You're my wife, you're betrothed to me. Mikudeshes bein avia bein asa, whether the document is given to her or her father. Midaita has to be with her consent. This is one time in a case of where she's above the age of 12 and a half.
What is the opinion? When we're doing a shtar, right? Is it just that they both have das and they're both agreed?
Both das, right? And right on the shtar.
Or whatever it is,
right.
But the shtar itself doesn't.
The accepting of the shtar.
It's a gibui das.
Yes, the accepting of the shtar is the agreement. It makes the kinyan chal.
And the shtar has to say, hurry up.
Yes, or right, one of those shtars. Right, exactly, right. And that's learned from the pasuk that we see that a person can use the shtar. So, shtar erusin. So this shtar that we're talking about, shakasa shalol lishma. Let's say, right, guy was a little desperate to get married, so he wrote for one woman. She said, "No, I'm not going to marry you." So he found another woman. He says, "Okay, well, they use the same shtar. How am I on the shtar?" And she cuts. So he was writing for a different woman, and he wants to give you this woman. Mahu. Do we say makshina? Do we say, right, that there's a comparison between the marrying and the divorcing? Ma yitzia be'inan lishma. Just like yitzia, you have to write a get lishma. Afavya, so to the kedushin be'inan lishma. So to the document for kedushin should be lishma. Idilma. Maybe we can compare different types of kedushin. The kasef leibin lishma, right? The money doesn't have to be lishma. The item itself, the article itself, is not lishma. So to the document is lishma, just as to say, "Harei mekudesh sleep." And Basa Debai, after they asked the question, Hadar Pasha, then they answered, "Havya Litzia Makshina." We do make a hekesh between Havya Litzia, Damakra v'yatzav ha'isa. It says v'yatzav ha'isa. Therefore, just like over there, the get has to be lishma. So to the kedushin, the shtar kedushin has to be written lishma. Itmar kasva lishma the shalei medayit. What about the opposite? He wrote it for her, but without her knowing, without her, right, without her consent. Rav Ravina Amar Mikadeshes and Rav Papa Rav Sharbi Amar and Mikadeshes. So Machlekes, Rav and Ravina say she's married. You don't need her to her knowledge that you're writing the document. And Rav Papa and Rav Sharbi says no, ain't Mikadeshes. What do you mean? So Amar Rav Papa says Rav Papa Ema Tama Didu, Bema Tama Didi. I'm gonna tell you both sides of the Machlekes. I'll tell you what their reasoning is, and I'll tell you my reasoning. Ema Tama Didu. They held. It's one who says that she is Mikadeshes. Tachsiv Yatzav Haisa. So therefore, we compare the kedushin to the divorcing. Just like when he's divorcing, he has to write it for her, but it does not have to be with her consent. So too, the marriage, he has to write it for her, but she doesn't need consent that he's writing the shtar kedushin.
But she did. She was macabre.
She did accept it, right? She did it.
At the time
right. He was right. He didn't know he was writing it. All right. And I'll tell you why, according to me, it shouldn't work. Let's see why. All right. I also didn't understand until not even after I learned this line, but then I had to think about this line for a little bit. So let's see. All right. So the das makna, the one who is giving up, right? The one who is giving up, he has his consent. Now, in the case of divorce, who's the one who's giving? It's the husband. He's giving, so it has to be with his consent, his knowledge, right? His consent has been written. So too over here, right? Being in das makna, you need the one who's giving, right? The husband is receiving, right? By default, he's acquiring, right? So if he's acquiring by default, who's the one who's giving? Who's the makna? That's the woman, right? So just like over there, the giver, the husband, has to be with his consent. So it's over here, the woman is giving of her ishus to the man. It has to be done with her consent. So that would be the spara azi as to why we say that it has to be done. It has to be done with consent. All right. We have rights that says you can't write the shtar erusin, right, or the suin without both their consent. So my lav shtar erusin and the suin mamish. We're not referring to these documents we're talking about here. It says lo shtar pisikasa. No, we're talking about different shtaros that some of the financial qualifiers for the wedding. How much are you going to go ahead and give your son, and your daughter, and then they get up, they make an agreement, they make these tanayim, right? And these are items that are acquired through a mirror. But the point is that's what we're talking about. These are items that has to be done with consent. Fine. Now, the third way of being Kaddish a woman is through bia.
So that last line was actually referring to tonight.
Right, those type of standards, right? How much you're going to give? How much are you going to give? Right, those are the obligations. Those are the ones that have to be done midait, right? Well, with both their consents. Fine. So how do we know that someone can go ahead and acquire with bia? The pasuk says, "bulas ba." Right, it's referring to she's a married woman, right? Bulas ba. So it says this is going to be Rabbi Yochanan, right? So it says basically Rabbi Yochanan. He goes for this pasuk. Bulas ba malamed. Ki yigach ish isha. That's a different pasuk. Ki matzeh ish shechev im isha bulas ba. Mesun Hashem, right? When someone basically lies with a married woman. All right. The whole pasuk. Ki matzeh ish shechev im isha bulas ba. Mesun Hashem. Isha shechev im isha. Va'isha obiarta hara mitzra. That's the pasuk over there, and I think it's chav beis. Now, melamed. So it says bulas baal melamed shenasa la baal ayde beila. In other words, bulas baal. How do you become a baal? Right, through beila. Right. So therefore, through bia, she becomes a choir. And Amar Abzeir says Abzeir. I mean, some say Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. So Kura Zosh Rabbi. I don't know. Is it so bad? Rebbe's teaching us. Why'd you run to that? Why'd you run to that source? Rebbe has a no limud. It says, right? Ki yikach isha uba'ala. Right? It says uba'ala. Malamed shedignes b'biyah. in the pasuk over there. It says kigach ish ubala, right? So therefore it says ubala, that teaches you that she's niknes babia. Why didn't you learn from that pasuk? So it says I would have thought ad mekadesh v'hader bayo. I would have thought it says ki yikach. First do the kicha. First, let's say do kesef kedushin, and then afterwards ubala, and then v'hader bayo. So Kamash Milan, no, it's not. There are two steps. You do the kicha first, and then you do the beila. Mm-hmm. No, it's one step. You do the beila. How do you know that from bulas bal? So therefore, you don't use the pasuk. So Maskar Rabbi Abba Bar Memo Im Kain.
Well, you can also they could also learn it from then ebook because.
All right, let's see. All right. Let's see. Good. So Maskiva Rabbi Abba Bar Memo. So Rabbi Abba Bar Memo asked a question. Im Kain Na'amarasa Dem Rachmana Beskila Heichim Ishkachasla. There's a special halacha by a girl who's a nara between the ages of 12 and 12 and a half, and she's betrothed to a man, so she's not fully married, and she's, let's say 12 and a day, right? So she's 12, right? She is murases, and she is a basula. Such a woman, if a person is ma'anes her, right? Mm-hmm. So then, or in the case, right, she'd be chayiv skila. Now, how could you find a girl, right, who is a namarasa, who's also a who be subject to skila? So if your havamina was, in other words, you would have thought from that pasuk that how could you even have the potential to think that pasuk was telling me that first you do kasef and then you do bia and now you're mekudeshes? How could you even thought that? What about the case of namarasa? If he first is mekadesh, let's say with kasef and after he was bail her, she's a bu'ula, she's not a basula, and therefore there wouldn't be a penalty of skila. And either kaddish v'lo, if he just did kedushin, kesef kedushin without beila, lav klumu, right? Because the pasuk says kigach isha ubalo, you have to be boiler in order for it to be the mikudeshes. And therefore, if you don't do the bia, then you're not mikudesh at all. Therefore, once again, you're not such a skila. So no, you do maybe he did the bia shloi kedarka. He did it in an abnormal way, not the normal way of the way a man and woman lie together. And therefore, that is bia for her to be married, but she would be considered, this is the teretz right now, but she would be considered to be a basula. The Bible says, no, ad kanle pligi Rebbe v'Rabbi Yochanan elavi achir. Only with somebody else. The machlekes as to whether bia shloi kedarka makes a woman a basula or a buula. That's only with someone else. Aval baal, but their husband, divrei hakolim bala shloi kedarka asa buula. She is categorically considered to be a buula, a non-virgin, if she has bia shloi kedarka with her husband. Mahi, right? And where do we see this? Machlekes the time of the Nebraisa. Bola asar anashim v'adaini basula. If 10 men come upon her, and she was a basula, so kulan baskila, all of them are skila because each one of them she is considered to be a basula, right? She's never considered to have relations before because it was always bishla kedarka. And Rabbi said, no, Amerni harishan baskila. The first one is skila because she was a basula. The kulan bechenek, the rest of them are chenek because after the first time she's already considered to be a bula. So that was machlekes as to only of an acher of someone who's not her husband. Her husband. Everyone agrees it would be a bula. So once again, you get back to the question. Navaratza, how would you find it? Some Rav Nachman and Barisa Mishkach Zakigan Shekitcha b'shtar. She's mekadesh with the shtar, no kesef, and then bia, rather just a shtar. Since a shtar is able to be used to completely sever a marriage, so too a shtar can be used to completely acquire a marriage. Fine. Period. Now for Rabbi Yochanan. Hi, Ubala. So Rabbi Yochanan, right, we brought him in. He was the one who said, Bu'ula's Baal. That was his source. So Rabbi Yochanan, hi, Ubala, ki yikach isha Ubala, my of it. They was doing that. So only this, a woman, a wife, is acquired through Bia, vein ama ivria niknes Bia. And one cannot go ahead and acquire his maidservant through Bia. Right, his Ama Ivria. Why? So good. Maybe you can learn from a kavachemer for Yavama, right? So Eddie, this is what you're talking about. My Yavama shei niknes bekasef, niknes bebia. My Yavama can't be acquired through kasef, but can be acquired through bia. So zu and Ama Ivia sheniknes bekasef. Eino din sheniknes bebia. Isn't it obviously niknes bebia? So this would have been the question, Eddie, on your source. So the verse says, no, you can't learn from Yavama. Why? Right? There is a natural zika, right? There's a bond that she already has, right? Once the brother dies, so now there's this zika. With the zika, that's when bia can work. But bia alone, you can't learn from Yavama. There's no source. Therefore, maybe Ama Ibra would have worked. So he says, it says over there, someone who's a son takes the Ama Ivria as his wife, and then he takes another wife. So the pasuk says, right, then he cannot go ahead and take away from the original Ama Ivria, who is basically treated as his full-fledged wife. So it says, so the pasuk says, so therefore he kisha hakasav le'acheres. So the pasuk over there can basically go ahead and compare the two types of his two wives. One that was Ama Ivria, and one that was a regular kedushin. Just like the acheres is able to be acquired through bia, Saf Ama Ivria also mikna bia. So over here, the Ama Ivria can go ahead and be acquired through bia. Kamash Malon. That therefore it says ubala. Only a woman, a wife, can be bikadosh through bia, but not one's Ama Ivria. For Rebbe, high svarminole. So Rebbe, how does he know that he can't go ahead and get an Ama Ivria through bia? So he can leave the Rachmanu Ubal. My Ubala. Why say Ubala? Shma Mina. Hard to learn from here. Two.
It say Ubal.
Right. It says Ubala. So they have to learn two. Luna can kind of Ama Ivria, and also learn that you can go ahead and acquire through bia. I Rava Damar. Barhena Svirli. So then Rabbi says, Barhena explained to them, Ki yigach isha ubala. So he learned another. The pasuk says when a man takes a word ubala, so kedushin. I'm saying the bia havi kedushin. Only a kedushin. If a person wants to go ahead and marry somebody who he is fit to have bia with, in other words, he doesn't get punished, then it's a good kedushin. But if a person, let's say, he's not allowed to have relations with his mother, right? So if he says to his mother, Harei mekudashas li, and she accepts it, that doesn't work. Why? Because it's not roy labia. Because he's not allowed to. He'll be punished for having bia. There's only kedushin was in the bia havi kedushin. However, kedushin ain't was in the bia lo havi kedushin. So Rava uses this pasuk already of ki yigach bala. So right? So where does how does Rava going to learn these drashas? Okay, niklav kra o bala. You could say bala, my ubala. Why say ubala? So shma mina. Therefore, learn all three chedushim. In this case, ubala. And therefore, we can learn from the pasuk. He doesn't need another source. All right, so that was Rabbi Yochanan learning that. And before now, we're going to start Rebbe, but I didn't even look on the base. But since tomorrow's a Wednesday, it's a non-laning day. We'll stop over here because now it starts the new sugya of Rebbe, what he does with Rabbi Yochanan's pasuk. Right, Rabbi Yochanan's pasuk.
What are we supposed to learn from the?
So there's three drashas they end up learning from there. Right, one is that. You can't acquire an Ama Ivria through bia, right? Only through kesef. Another one, according to him, is only kedushins that's Masur Bia, right? And the first one was, and the first one he learned that bia was kind. All right, well, we'll stop here.